Great to see you.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me again.
Yeah, absolutely happy to have you. And like I said, in person, we're going to try to get you sometime.
I need to make it up there one of these days. Yes, I need to have that
happen.
Cool.
All right. Well, welcome. I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. All right. Well, hey, everybody. So Michelle gave a great introduction there, but just to recap, my name is April Dunnam. I'm a principal cloud advocate here at Microsoft, and I lead our Power Platform advocacy team. There's a few ways to reach me here. Put some links on the deck here to my YouTube channel, LinkedIn, or Twitter, active on all of those. So great ways to reach out if you have any questions that we don't get to today, but I will be saving some time towards the end for questions. So what I'm going to be talking about today is the power of the Power Platform. So just giving a real good holistic overview of the Power Platform and then touching towards the end on some key new innovations and updates that we've seen with the Power Platform as of late. So kicking it off here, let's see, there we go, get that clicker working. So Power Platform, I think one of the things that really sets it apart is how Microsoft really looks at low code just a bit differently. So rather than kind of having siloed one-off tools for things, it's really a holistic suite of tools to build solutions. So everything working together to be able to do everything from having your front end to your back end to doing your automation part of things, injecting chatbots into the mix, business analytics with Power BI and all these great things, and even website front-end development with that as well, with Power Pages, as one kind of holistic suite of tools that work together. Because when we think about, now why is that important? Because when we think about the solutions or the things that we build, oftentimes we do have a lot of disconnected solutions, what's the problem with that? We might have something that has so a low code app here, a pro code app, you might have some integration with a collaborative suite like Teams and SharePoint, and everything being disconnected. Now, the problem with that is that it increases complexity of your solutions. It's hard to maintain. And there's lots of support needed for that. So that's why having one platform, such as the Power Platform, that integrates seamlessly with things like Teams, with SharePoint, with SQL and Azure and all of that great stuff is really kind of game-changing for how we develop solutions here. Having that single point of administration, security, and governance, and single point of entry to maintain your solutions, which is what makes the Power Platform so powerful. I just love this kind of case study here. So by using the Power Platform, Walgreens Boots Alliance was able to take the time to build an app development for production from anywhere between 50 to 80%. So they're delivering in weeks rather than months or years that it was taking before. So this just shows how with low-code solutions like the Power Platform, it's really unlocking, making it even easier and faster to build solutions. So what do we have today with the Power Platform? So it's grown a lot over the years. I think since the last time I've talked, I think Power Pages was added as its own thing here since the last time I spoke at this group. So we have Power Apps for web and mobile application development, Power Automate for the process and workflow automation side of things, Power Virtual Agents that allows us to build chatbots and conversational agents, Power Pages, which formerly known as Power Apps Portals, if you ever built those. So now it's its own standalone product here for building secure business websites, and Power BI for data exploration, analytics, and reporting. Now, all of these tools, as you said, kind of anything that you would need for a business solution, there's a tool in here to do that works, integrates seamlessly. All of these sharing some few things that we see here at the bottom here, like data connector model, which I'll touch on here in a little bit. Things like AI Builder to inject AI. And we're going to be talking a lot about AI today because that's just where so much of the innovation is with the Power Platform lately. So we have to touch on that. Dataverse to have our low-code backend for our applications. Power FX being kind of that easy point of entry programming language, quote unquote, for the Power Platform. And then also something relatively new, managed environments. So we might have heard, if you did anything with the Power Platform or stepped your toes into those waters, of the Center of Excellence Toolkit, which is kind of like an add-on that we have to make managing and governing the Power Platform easier. Well, now we have managed environments, which are kind of taking some of that functionality that we have in there to make it easier to manage and govern the Power Platform into kind of an easy point-and-click solution. You just click a toggle, make your environment a managed environment, and that's all baked in there for you without having to do any additional configuration or setup. So lots that we can do here with the Power Platform. So we'll dive a little bit into each one of these tools a little bit more, and then I'll also show a few demos too as we move on here. So again, one of the things that I love about the Power Platform is there's something in it for everyone. It allows everyone to innovate. This is a great example of that. So whether you are, we think of Power Platform traditionally as, okay, this is a low code, no code tool. So it's kind of geared towards what you might consider like a maker audience, those that are really good with Excel, that know their way around a SharePoint list, and Access and all those similar tools. So there's a place for people like that. But there's also a spot in low code of the Power Platform for the professional developer audience as well. So if you know JavaScript, HTML, CSS, C#, .NET, all of that, we can start integrating and plugging into the Power Platform and extending it with those tools as well. So no matter what your background is, basically, you can start building solutions with the Power Platform. And that really is, to me, the key to success. So you might have heard something called fusion teams. It was just, I think, a Gartner term that was thrown out there a few years ago. But all that means is these solutions and these tools work better together when you're kind of creating a fusion team, a team of the low code, the citizen developer, and the pro code developer and IT admins all working together, because we have the low code developer that's able to rapidly build solutions with things like Power Apps and Power Automate, and they know the process that they're wanting to solve very well. Combine that with the professional developer who can do things like create backend APIs and integrate that with your existing services that you might have, and who can extend the UI and the UX or custom controls. There's really kind of no limits to what we can do if we work together as a team like that with the Power Platform. So diving in a little bit into each of these products a little bit more, we have Power Apps, as I mentioned, for that low-code application development. Two primary modes, I guess, of Power Apps that we can build. So one being a Canvas app, which it's called Canvas app because we literally get a blank canvas that we customize and kind of pixel perfect can drag and drop controls in. And then model-driven apps. So what you're seeing here is an example actually of a Canvas application that's going to be made for us using a feature that I'll show here in a little bit to actually build an app based off of an image that we upload, which is pretty cool. So it's some of the new AI functionality that we have here. But we also have something called a model-driven application. So that's more if you have kind of a data model and you want to have a standard look and feel of an app to be able to manage some information. I'll show you an example of this in a minute. That's another model that we have. So whether we need complete, kind of UI, UX control via a Canvas app, or whether we want kind of a boilerplate, easy to set up system where we can manage tabular data and all that kind of stuff, we have a type of app in Power Apps that can help us accomplish that. And both can be used together as well. We can embed Canvas apps in model-driven apps and extend the UI that way. But another thing to know about Power Apps is if you do have like existing solutions, so we can obviously create net new applications with Power Apps and whatever we can imagine. But it's also good for modernizing legacy apps. If you have an old Access database out there, if you have like an old console application or whatever it might be, it's Power Platform and Power Apps specifically can be used to about 75% of apps can be modernized with the Power Platform. So lots that we can do there, even if you have kind of like an older application that you're using that needs a little bit of an update. I did an episode recently on my show that I host, the Low Code Revolution, with another Microsoft person talking about how you can actually modernize mainframe application development with Power Apps, which is pretty cool. So you can create a custom connector, which I'll talk about here in a minute, and create a front end in Power Apps to a mainframe. So like really the possibilities are endless here. So, that's how we can do from like a legacy app perspective, but, anything that you can imagine of the tools that you're using, things that the kind of the low hanging fruit situations, we can create simple automations for and simple applications for. Now, one of the things that I just said I would talk about is the world of connectors, right? So that's really what makes it so fast and so powerful and easy to build solutions with the Power Platform and apps, is the fact that we don't have to reinvent the wheel and write authentication into all these different services, because we have these things called connectors. So we have over 900 different connectors right now to all kinds of different services in the Power Platform. And this is both cloud services and then even on-prem, because we have something called an on-premises data gateway that you can install to connect to your, say, your SharePoint on-prem environment or whatever you might have. So with these connectors, it's literally just a plug and play. You kind of authenticate into the connector with your credentials. Those get passed to the service, and now I can consume that information. I can write back to it, whatever I need to do inside the Power Platform in our applications and Power Apps and in our workflows inside of Power Automate. And these connectors actually are open source as well. So if you have your favorite API out there that you like that you don't see a connector for in the Power Platform right now, you can actually build what's called a custom connector to that, which is basically just a wrapper around an API. So, basically every service that we're interacting with these days has an API that allows us to talk back and forth to it. So if you recognize that you have an API like that, you can create a custom connector to that enables the Power Platform to talk to it and put it out on the independent publisher connector program there so that everyone that's using the Power Platform can benefit from that. So even if it's something as funny as a Chuck Norris joke API or something, you can create a connector for that and start using it inside your Power Platform solutions. Now, another thing that really makes it so easy and fast to build these solutions is we can build these at scale and make them reusable with the power of components. This is something that I want to always make sure people know about in terms of Power Apps is there's a lot of times where we have something where we might want to have a standard look and feel up. So maybe we want a standard pop-up menu when we want to confirm that we're deleting something, or maybe we want a standard header or footer or left-hand navigation in our app, whatever it might be. Rather than having to painstakingly recreate those individual elements in each application that you create, we can build that as a component and make it reusable. So this gives us a kind of reusable plug and play asset that we can deploy across all of our applications that we're using to have a standardized look and feel and function. As far as the type of components that we have, so Canvas components. So if you are a maker, that's a good component for you because you just use the out-of-the-box controls that we have inside of Power Apps Canvas applications and build out the widget or the control that we want, save that, and then everyone can use it. But the power of components really goes beyond that as well. As I mentioned, there's something in it for the developer that knows things like C# and React and TypeScript and JavaScript and all that. If you do know those, you have that skill set there, you can build what's called a Power Apps component framework control, which allows you to extend what's even possible. So we can do things like interact with custom charting libraries to build like a crazy chart widget to embed in our app, or like a drag and drop. That's one of my favorite Power Apps component framework controls, one that Scott Duro built, Power Drag and Drop, so we can drag and drop elements inside of our application. So lots that we can do there so that we can truly extend it and do whatever we need to do with a combination of these two different types of components that we have. So that's Power Apps, and we'll look a little bit more at that as we get towards the end here. Moving on to Power Automate. So this enables us to really automate anything that we can think of with Power Automate. So we have a few different types of flows that we can create in Power Automate. So we have cloud flows, which enable us, again, to use that connector model with those over 900 different connectors to do, thousands upon thousands of different automations that we can see with those connectors. So how it works is we have a trigger, something that kicks off a workflow in a service. So if we're talking about SharePoint, a trigger could be when a new item is added to a list or a file is uploaded or deleted or modified, anything like that. Or, same thing with insert data source name here. And then we have actions that we build out. So it's basically like, if this, then this happens. Very super easy to build and start automating solutions. Now, there's multiple things within the Power Automate umbrella, though, that help us here for this automation. So not only can we do those cloud flows like I talked about with the connector model, but we can even use things like Process Advisor, which is another functionality of Power Automate, to identify opportunities for automation. So if we have some kind of process where we're uploading files and we're extracting information from them or whatever we're doing, and we don't know if that's really a good candidate for automation or even where like the big bottlenecks would be, you can run it through the Process Advisor tool, and it will give you an output, kind of this cool process model that will show you, okay, here's where the longest running piece of your process is, and here are some suggestions using Power Automate and the Power Platform for how you can automate this. So not only can it help you discover ways to automate, you can also create the automations, like I said, with those cloud flows, but also we have these things called desktop flows. So if there is something that you need to automate that doesn't have a connector, maybe it is, like I mentioned earlier, like an old console application that you just have to use as part of your job. And you need to be able to get information from that, maybe extract it and put it in another database or whatever it might be. Or maybe it's something like getting data from a website that doesn't have an API. We can use robotic process automation and Power Automate Desktop to get that information, automate anything on your desktop, and integrate that and then have an automation there. This even integrates with AI Builder, which I'll touch on more later on, to make your workflows even smarter with artificial intelligence. And there's built-in integration. As I said, the underlying theme that you'll see as I talk about all of this is how all of these interconnect and work together. So with Power Automate, we can use that to extend Power Virtual Agents to make them smarter. So with Power Virtual Agents, that's kind of our chatbot tool. So rather than just having it return kind of hard-coded information, we can go call Power Automate from our Power Virtual Agent spots and have it go get information from a database, return that, whatever we need it to do to extend that Power Virtual Agent spots that we built. And as I mentioned, this is just an example of kind of where robotic process automation and Power Automate Desktop fits in. So anything, any old apps without APIs, we can still automate that thanks to this Power Automate Desktop, which is included in your Windows 10 and 11, kind of a free version of that devices. So definitely check that out if you haven't already. Now, speaking of Power Virtual Agents, just a glimpse here of what this looks like. Kind of a very similar editor experience, honestly, to Power Automate in that you kind of define a trigger or a topic and what kicks off that topic, a trigger phrase. So like, I want to know what your store hours are and things like that. And then you build out the conversation path based off of whether it's returning a hard-coded message or, like I said, calling Power Automate to get information from that, asking questions and follow-up stuff. To continue the conversation. A really simple way to build bots using the low-code tools here. And then Power Pages as well. This is, like I said, the newest kind of feature of or the tool set inside of the Power Platform that's derived from the Power Apps portals. So it kind of got a really big kind of under the hood refresh and update here to make it even easier to build these Power Pages. As you can see, very streamlined now. We can have different navigation and pages and just add in widgets here to build out a website. So all this connecting to a Dataverse backend. So that's the power with the Power Platform. We have Dataverse, that underlying data model. So all that data is easily accessible, whether it's in the public-facing website here, like a Power Page, or an internal application in Power Apps, or a flow inside of Power Automate. Very simple to kind of, there's pre-built templates that we can take advantage of and all of that with Power Pages. And controls that we just drag and drop on the screen. And then we have an external public-facing website, because with Power Apps, Canvas apps, and model-driven apps, those are meant for kind of inside your tenant, internal consumption, basically line of business type application needs. Whereas this is that external element. If you need to have kind of public-facing element website, we can do that with Power Pages. And of course, Power BI, which is the oldest tool in the tool set here, to be able to have those dashboards, reports, and analytics. All of this, as I mentioned earlier, connecting to each other, so we can embed Canvas application inside of a Power BI dashboard to manipulate data, to add data into an underlying data source, and then see a refresh of a visualization, for example. Or the other way around, we can have a model-driven or a Canvas application, which we embed a Power BI dashboard in to see a report visualization for some of our data. So lots that we can do here. Even have a button inside of Power BI that goes and clicks off a workflow process inside of Power Automate for integration there. So lots we can do. And then just diving a little bit deeper into those kind of underlying things that I mentioned that are shared across all of these products we just talked about, like AI Builder, Dataverse, and Managed Environments. The AI Builder is definitely something to look at if you haven't. So this, what it is doing is giving us a bunch of pre-trained AI models based off of Azure Cognitive Services, which we can use just kind of plug and play into our solutions inside of the Power Platform. So we don't have to know anything about, data science or any of that, or AI ML. It's a pre-built model. We just upload some example files. So one of the models that we have, for example, is for invoice processing. So we could upload an image of an invoice, like 20 different images, for example, train the model just based off of that data, map the fields that we want to get, and then we're good to go. Use that inside of a workflow to do any kind of automation, to add that into our backend database, whatever we need to do. So there are a few different scenarios that are really common to use AI Builder for. Things like I mentioned, document processing, whether it's extracting information from an invoice. Receipt processing is another pre-built model specifically for doing your time and expenses there. Identity document reader, so if you need to be able to process driver's license or passports, things like that. Even a business card reader functionality, pre-built model there to get information from that. And then generic forms processing, so any kind of custom form that you have, you can upload and train the model on as well to recognize key elements from that. We also have vision models, so if you need to do things like maybe take a picture of cars and identify what type of cars are in your parking lot, or like a vending machine, and identify what elements or items are in there, you can do that with the object detection model. Things like prediction, to be able to kind of predict what the next value would be, and then all kinds of language models that we see here for like being able to detect sentiment analysis, whether something's positive or negative, do translation and key phrase extraction. So again, all this that we can just plug and play. And then the other cool thing too with the Power Platform, as far as the integration, is the overall integration with Microsoft 365. So anything that we build in Power Automate or Power Apps, I'm sorry, can basically become a Teams application. So there's a simple add to Teams button inside of Power Apps, so we can make any application a Teams app. There's built-in automation as an integration as well. So if you look inside of Teams, you might have noticed that there's applications for Power Apps and for Power Virtual Agents and Power Automate. So that's part of the Dataverse for Teams functionality, which gives us kind of a subset of the full Power Platform functionality in Dataverse to be able to build tailored solutions to Microsoft Teams. I really love the Power Automate integration that's included in this, to be able to do things kind of like a message extension. So we can click on a message and have it automate a workflow when I click on that to do like a follow-up reply, or remind me to follow up, remind me to schedule a meeting, things like that, as well as, Teams is a really great place to embed a chatbot. So that Power Virtual Agents integration that's included as part of Dataverse for Teams in your Microsoft 365 licenses is really powerful to be able to embed a chatbot inside of Teams. So lots that we can do there. Anything that we're building in the Power Platform, if you're already using Teams, it just makes sense to embed and integrate those solutions with inside of the Teams context for sure. Just a peek here of what Dataverse looks like that I talked about earlier. That is that underlying backend data model that we have available to us. So while we can, of course, use all of those 900 different connectors that we have and store our data wherever it needs to be, we get even the full power of the Power Platform stack by utilizing Dataverse. There's all kinds of stuff we can do with Dataverse. Like I said, model-driven applications, Power Pages are reliant on using Dataverse as a data store. Now, there's a new thing that I didn't have a slide on for, but I wanted to make sure to mention, called virtual tables. So say that you had some information in SharePoint in a list, and maybe also in Azure SQL, and you didn't really want to move all of that into Dataverse, but you wanted to utilize it in Dataverse so that you can build a Power Page or build a model-driven app. Instead of moving that data, we can add those as virtual tables, so that there's kind of a two-way relationship, where now if I edit the data in Dataverse, it'll go back into our SharePoint list or whatever that data source is, and then vice versa from SharePoint to Dataverse. So now we have that kind of virtual relationship going, and then we can take the full advantage of these Dataverse kind of specific functionalities like model-driven and Power Pages. And then as far as scalability, that's a question that always comes up with the Power Platform. Are the solutions or the things that I build in the Power Platform really able to scale out, or is it just for simplistic kind of one-off use cases? We do have the power of solutions where we can package up all the things that we build in the Power Platform in one holistic file. So we can package up our front end with Power Apps, we can package up our back end with data, with Dataverse, our workflow processes and all that, our security rules and all that kind of stuff in one asset here, and then seamlessly deploy those between environments within inside the Power Platform, so we can have kind of your traditional development lifecycle. In addition to that, all kinds of ways that we can control this at scale through data encryption, identity management, like I mentioned, the COE earlier, the Center of Excellence Toolkit and managed environments to be able to really do even things all the way down to row level security and track, how many apps are being created, what connectors are using, and all of that. And then also data loss prevention policies, which are really key to kind of securing and managing your environment. So built right into the Power Platform, being able to go down to even the individual action level inside of a connector. So you can say that you could read information from LinkedIn or Twitter, but you can't post anything, for example. So lots that we can do here with the data loss prevention policies. And the community itself and the people using this is growing and growing every day. So see about 500,000 organizations each month using the Power Platform. And what I love is the community is just growing and growing. It's truly one of the best communities that I've seen here, had the pleasure of being a part of, is a Power Platform community. We have 20 million users each month and 500 plus user groups like this in over 50 different countries. So it's a really thriving and growing community. So a great thing to be a part of. All right, so all this leading up to in the next like 30 minutes or so that we have here, touching on some of the latest innovations though with the Power Platform. So we got kind of a holistic overview, but we can't talk about this as of late without touching on AI, because it's everywhere these days. I know Chris is going to be touching on that with Syntax here after me, so you'll learn all about that. But in terms of the Power Platform, the percentage of the world's data that's going to be produced by generative AI, their estimate is going to jump from under 1%, which it was in 2021, to around 10% in 2025. So this is something that is just going to keep growing, and you're starting to see it be integrated inside of the Power Platform pretty fast. So this isn't anything new as far as like kind of these AI being infused into the Power Platform. It kind of started, I would say, back in 2019. So AI Builder, like I mentioned, that was released in 2019 to bring those kind of low-code models into the Power Platform. And then 2021, we started to see even more. So there's something called Power Apps Ideas, which was released in 2021 to allow us to basically use natural language and have that turn that into Power FX formulas, which I'll show you an example of here in a little bit. 2022, we started to see that same functionality is about being able to kind of write like expressions for us in Power Automate and things like that in natural language to create a flow inside of Power Automate. And then this cool functionality to take an image or a Figma file and have that create a Power App for us using some object detection capability with the Cognitive Services AI. And then most recently, which we've all probably just seen the buzz about in the news over the past month, starting in March, we saw a handful of innovations come in the realm of AI to the Power Platform, just making it that much easier to get started. So Power Virtual Agents, we saw conversation boosters. We have a new Azure OpenAI model with templates for AI Builder. We have Copilots. So we're kind of in the era of Copilots, I guess we're seeing. So we have that for Microsoft 365. We have security Copilots. We have GitHub Copilots. And now we have Copilots for Power Apps and coming to Power Automate and Power Virtual Agents. So lots of innovations. The only thing this is doing here is just making it that easier to get started building solutions. So kind of helping us, we say that Power Platform is no code, low code, and pro code. Now this is making it even truly more no code needed with a lot of these AI innovations. So how a lot of this is being made possible is through these large scale foundation models. So there's a lot that we have kind of going around that you might have heard of in terms of this. So DALL-E to create images. So it's actually baked into Bing now. If you haven't tried it, there's a Bing image creator. So just quick tip there for people building Power Apps. If you want to have some nice images and visualizations in your Power Apps, check out that Bing image creator that uses the DALL-E model here and just have it generate unique images for you to use in your Power Apps because it does pretty well. We have Codex. That's what enables us to actually understand and generate code. So what Power Apps Ideas, like I mentioned, is doing there, which I'll show you here in a second, that's using kind of a Codex model there to generate the code for that. And then, of course, we have GPT-3 that understands and generates natural language and the kind of thing of the hour, I guess now, ChatGPT, which is that conversational AI chatbot to be able to generate and have conversations, generate all kinds of content there. So lots that we can do with these large scale foundation models here, and all of it, as I mentioned, getting baked into the entire Microsoft ecosystem here, including the Power Platform across the board as we're seeing these integrations pop up from a day-to-day basis, basically. So diving into kind of some of these integrations, like I mentioned, per product, starting with Power Apps. Power Apps Ideas is kind of where it all started. So with that, makers, you only need to describe kind of what your goal is using natural language, and it can generate the Power FX code for you. And this was big in and of itself because that was often one of the biggest barriers to entry when it comes to Power Apps, is knowing Power FX, that underlying formula language that you need to know to really be able to make your apps do anything inside of Power Apps. So this reduces the barrier to entry to that. You can tell it what you want to do, and it produces the formula for you. So kind of like a deeper look at that. So we have like a gallery here, for example, and if we want to, and I'll actually just segue here to a demo because it's probably best shown that way. So if we go over here, and we'll create a, there we go. Go to one of my galleries. I think I have one. There we go. So take this gallery, for example, that I have on the left or on the right. So it's just a few names, for example. So, but one of the things that you'll notice with Power Apps Ideas, hopefully you can see this little light bulb icon that kind of pops up as I selected that control. So this is going to open up the Power Apps Ideas panel. So this is using that codex and that AI functionality to let me, with this kind of text box up here, tell it what I want it to do. And it's even giving me some prompts or suggestions of things I might want to do with this gallery. So like if the gallery is not empty, show a label, things like that, which is a good practice. But maybe I want to do something like sort by name or something like that. So I can type that in, click the little arrow, and then it can give me some ideas. So you do have to know like what your field names are, and I forgot like what I named this, so I can look at my, yeah, so it should be name. But you can do, so that's one way that you can do it, and it can kind of generate the formula for you here. So I can use any of these suggestions. So like if it's blank or if there's no label, simply click on one of these, like copy that code there, and then I can paste it in into my items property, and there you go. Doesn't like that. That's great. Gotta love live demos, right? Oh, because it's pointing to the gallery and not that. Hold on just a second. And I have a collection. But you get the point here. Sometimes it doesn't always behave. So not only can you use it to do things like filter galleries, but you can also use it to manipulate data as well. So you see this label I have here with like the first name and last name. You can do things like text and conditional formatting. So if I were to choose text formatting, this is one of my favorite things to do with this, honestly, is the formatting by example AI capability. So if I know that I have first and last name, but I don't want the full last name, I just want maybe the first initial of the last name for this formatting, I can simply type in how I want the format to be. And I can even add other examples if I'm worried about it, you know, kind of being right. So I can say Morgan C. And what it's doing below, based off of what I put in of how the current format is and how I want it to be, it's generating some ideas. So here's a Power FX formula that it said would work for that. So I can select it, click apply. And you see, as soon as I do that, there you go, that one worked. Now all of the fields there changed to only get the first initial of the last name. So really good. I didn't have to know this kind of complex, you know, left function and finding and all that kind of stuff. That whole Power FX logic there. I didn't have to go look that up and how to do that. I just told it, this is the format that I want, and it did it. So a really cool example there of how we can do that, as well as, so that's the text formatting that we looked at, but conditional formatting as well might be something that you want to do. So let's see if, we'll see if we can get this to work. I think this is text input 1.2 equals, so it could say like equals something specific. So like maybe if you're a senior data analyst, we'll do that. Do not show it or something like that. So then we can kind of copy that formula, or we can apply that. And then, okay, so kind of, it's not perfect. So that's kind of like one thing to point out here. Like some of the suggestions, like that's not exactly what I wanted. You'll have to know like kind of what to do. But either way, it's pretty useful. You can tell from that, like that example there. Okay, so that's Power Apps ideas. Now another thing, if I go back to the deck here real quick, is Express Design is what it's called. So with Express Design, we can generate applications and Power Apps based off of a Figma file. So that's one of the things that we can do. So Figma, if you don't know, is a way for us to create mockups of applications. So we can do that for the UI. So I have a Figma file here, and as you can see, I'm just pasting in a link to the file. So I'm going to go get my Figma token and all that kind of stuff and generate one. But this is actually going to create an application based off of a design I have. So if you're working, if you do have UI designers, UX designers on your team that you can take advantage of that know Figma, or maybe yourself, you know that, you can take a design like this, just pass it in, and now it creates the application for you. Now all you have to do is kind of make the pieces work. So when you click, a certain button, add in the PowerFX logic and all that, and it can do all of that for you. So that's one of my favorite new features here. That's been rolled out recently. I use Figma a bit. It's a really cool feature to check out. With the same functionality though, with Express Design, you can, if you don't know Figma, but you have like an old paper form or maybe even a hand sketch form that you have, you can use the same functionality to upload your image or your form there. And that will actually do Azure Cognitive Services object detection in the background based off of what you upload here. So this is an example of kind of a Word form or PDF form that I had here that I converted for an appointment scheduler. And you can see the object detection was able to recognize all the labels, date pickers, buttons, drop downs, combo boxes, and all that. And it can even create a Dataverse table in the backend for you to store your data if you want to store it in Dataverse. And it recognizes all the data types, as you're seeing here, like whether they should be text or dates and all that. And now you just click next, and it creates the application for you based off of the image that you had. So this is really good if you have kind of an old paper process or something that you're wanting to modernize. With Power Apps, you can upload that, and this will get you like 80% of the way there. So you kind of see on the output, you might want to do some slight tweaking to the UI, and then of course add in the actual logic and what happens when you click buttons and all that. But that gets you a lot of the ways with this functionality here. It's really, really pretty cool. So it should load here in a second. You can kind of see the output of what it does. And you don't have to have it create the Dataverse database. If you want to store it in SharePoint or wherever else, you can just skip that step. So yeah, there you go. That's what that does there. Now getting on with even the newer stuff that we can do with Power Apps, we have the whole world of Copilot. So this is even taking it a step further where, and I'm going to probably best explained here if I just switch again over to a demo, because it's really cool to demo live if it works. Crossing my fingers, it does most of the time. So this is in a private preview right now, so you have to explicitly sign up for it. So just keep that in mind because you're not going to be seeing this unless you've signed up and got access with the private preview. But hopefully it'll be rolling out more broadly soon. But what you'll see now is a new thing on the homepage of Power Apps is this little text box. So you can simply tell it, like, I want an app to track expense reports or whatever it is you want to do. Click enter. And now this will go through and use that Copilot and that GPT in the background functionality to recognize what you said and suggest a data model for you of the data that you would need for an expense tracking solution. So much that we can do with this. So you'll see that not only was I able to put in what I wanted, but now on the right-hand side, I'm going to be able to keep interacting with this Copilot to tweak this data model as much as I need to. So what it suggested actually looks pretty good. So we have a report ID, name, an amount, category, date, and status. So, I mean, I can't really think of much else except maybe the person that submitted it. So I could say things like add a column or submitter. and it will go through and it'll get that added. Sometimes it's, not always the fastest. So there we go. So now it added a column. And the thing that I love too is it includes sample data. So you can make sure that your data is in the format that you want and all of that as well. And you can even have it suggest things. So give me suggestions. And it can give you some ideas for other columns that you might need for this, like an approver, a receipt, if I want to attach a receipt, something like that. So yeah, approver might be good. So I can click on that and just keep interacting with this Copilot to have it build out the application for me. So of course it doesn't just do this, it's going to help me build the data model once it gets that added. But once that's done, we can click the create an app button. And hopefully this will speed up because we're running low on time here. There we go. So that's added there. We got approver. So now I can click create app, and this will create a Power App for me in the back end without me having to do anything. This will be a fully functioning application. And I just told it what I wanted it to do. And the cool thing about the application, which I'll show you once it's done here, is it not only did we create it with Copilot, but we get an embedded Copilot. So there's a new Copilot control that you can add into any Power App that you build. And now you can ask it questions with GPT in the Azure OpenAI service there about your data. So it works similar to a gallery where you bind it to a data source. So that could be Dataverse, or it could also be a SharePoint list, SQL, whatever connector you're working with there. And you can ask it questions about your data. So it kind of gets around maybe where you don't have to do a lot of adding searching or sorting or filtering into your app, because you can just ask it questions specifically about what you're wanting. And the application that it builds is responsive as well. So meaning that if you're on a mobile or a desktop or a tablet, it's going to change the orientation based off of the device you're on. And sorry, there's just so many Copilot things. I know I'm talking a lot. We have a Copilot built into the maker experience of Power App as well. So now once I'm in here, if I'm wanting to tweak this application in any way, and I can, but I don't know how, I can ask the Copilot, like, how do I make sure my Power App is accessible, for example? I can interact with this Copilot in the maker experience, and it can give me some tips based off of what it finds out on the internet there. There we go. So here's all these tips on how I can make sure my Power Apps is accessible, and I didn't have to leave and open up a new tab and go to Bing or anything like that. So let's kind of close this out for now and explore what we get with this new AI generated kind of Copilot application. So this right here is the new Copilot control that I was telling you about that's baked in. So what you do, as I mentioned, is you just bind it to a data source. And now if we were to play this application, we can ask it anything we want. So we know this is our expense tracking app. We can ask what the total amount of the reports are. So maybe we want to get a sum of all the expense reports, and it's able to go and return that information easily. I could say what, or like how many items are pending, and it can go and tell me that there we go. There's 2 items that are pending right now that haven't been processed. And so anything that we can think of that we need to ask it, we can interact with this Copilot. So that's one way, but of course we want the traditional way of being able to interact with our data. So we have this nice tab view. This is using what's called a new modern control that we have inside of Power Apps using the Fluent UI. So very similar to what we see in Teams. But now on the left-hand side, we have our gallery where we can see all of our records, and we can click on any of these. And on the right-hand side, we can see all the details. But then we can create a new record. So add any data that we need to inside of our table. So, and then as I mentioned before, this is responsive. So I'll show you what I mean by that. So if I were to drag this down and kind of make it, let's not close out of that, a little bit smaller, like optimized for a phone, you can see how the stuff is moving accordingly and kind of optimizing based off of the device I'm on. So it went from 2 columns down to 1, optimized more for a phone. So that's in and of itself is huge for the apps that we built here. Cool. All right, so that's the Copilot stuff I want to make sure to touch on, and then I'll kind of breeze through a little bit some of the other stuff here. So that's Power Apps Copilot, but we also have this inside Power Virtual Agents as well. So with this new Copilot, or sorry, we have an embedded option capability, so we can embed Power Virtual Agents inside of Power Apps easily as part of this new rollout. So we just add in the new PVA Copilot chatbot control, and then bind it to whatever chatbot we want to have, and then now we have an embedded chatbot. And I have videos about this on my channel as well, since I know we're getting kind of pressed on time here. We also have this AI functionality inside of Power Automate, and yeah, see your hand up, Michelle.
Yeah, thanks, April. There is a question in the chat around, they don't see Copilot component yet and the upcoming features. Do you know when that will be available?
I don't have like I don't know when it will be available just in there, because like I said, right now it's a private preview. So I know if like in the short term, it's still private preview that you have to sign up for, and I should have had that link ready. I think I didn't even put it in my, hold on, let me put it in the chat real quick. I think I remember it off the top of my head. Power Apps AI preview, I think is the right link, hopefully. So you have to go sign up for that right now. And I don't know a timeline. I don't think they've released one yet of when that will be more widely available and show up in the upcoming features to enable.
Yeah. Perfect. One other question. Is the Copilot generated app a Canvas app or a model-driven app?
Great question. Yeah. So what you were seeing there is a Canvas application. So it's always going to generate a Canvas application for you. But since the data that it's creating for you in the backend is Dataverse, you could easily create a model-driven app as well based off of that data and just point it to the Dataverse table that it generated for you and have that. Great questions. Yeah, keep them coming too. I'm almost wrapping up here. I'm just going to kind of high-level overview some of these other Copilot features that we have. So starting with Power Automate here, we have a natural language to flow option. Now, Copilot isn't out there yet fully for Power Automate. I don't even have access to show you that yet, but we do have format data by examples and the natural language to flow that we can kind of show off here. So the natural language to flow is pretty cool. Same way like that we did in Power Apps is we get this pop-up box here where we can say every time someone responds to a form survey, store the response in SharePoint and send a message on Teams, right? It was something simple like that with natural language, and it will suggest the flow like we kind of saw with Power Apps just now. So it's going to show us here's like kind of this recommended flow that we have here with a trigger of when a new response is created, and it does all the actions for you. So a pretty straightforward process with Power Automate that should be available in all of your tenants now. It is a preview feature, but it is widely rolled out. So hopefully you do see this in your tenants to start using. And again, using that same OpenAI codex and AI model there. Now, the thing that I love, though, even more than what we just saw there with the kind of natural language, is this format by examples. So similar to Power Apps again, where I took that first and last name and I gave it the example of what it was and what I wanted it to be. We have that same thing in Power Automate, because as you may or may not know, the formula languages in Canvas applications, like we just saw, and in Power Automate are completely different. They're totally different. So how I might format that same thing with getting the last name from the first name in Power Automate is different than in Power Apps. So it's kind of like you're having to learn two things. So this cuts down on that as well. So say for a date time, if I didn't know how to get that in the right format, like I want to here, I can just say, here's the format it comes in as. I want it to show the full month name and then the date. And then it will give me this really long expression that we need to make that happen inside of Power Automate that I can just copy and paste and get going. So again, that's another thing that should be widely rolled out. It's been there for several months now that you can start taking advantage of today and start using. And then one of the other newer things that was announced, again, was with Power Virtual Agents. So we have a Copilot and Power Virtual Agents to help us build topics. So topics are kind of like building those conversation paths. So you can just simply tell it, I want a topic to help me order a pizza or whatever it might be, and it will build out the full kind of conversation node for you. And then the thing that I really like is Conversation Booster. So this is really cool because it's using that OpenAI functionality. And you can simply kind of paste in a website here. And based off of that, like you can not even have any topic. Oops. Okay. I was actually going to just go to a demo of that because it's probably easier if I have just a quick minute here. Cool. So what we can do in Power Virtual Agents with this new Conversation Booster is we want to use this new unified canvas to get access to this. And then we'll click continue. But you should see this option here to paste in a website that you want to get information from. So I might go to learn.microsoft.com. So maybe I want to have it answer questions about the Power Platform. So let's see. Let me find Power Platform in this long list here. And let's just do Power Automate specifically. Okay, we'll go to this one. So we can paste in any website that we need. And, oh, I didn't put HTTPS, so we gotta do that. Or not. Oh, it's too long. So that's a problem sometimes that you have there. So I'll try to just go into the root there, maybe. There we go. So I'll just call this Power Automate, and hopefully this will go relatively fast. But essentially, I won't have to define a single topic. It can just go out and use GPT to be able to get any information from that website that I just gave it and answer any questions if it's on the site, basically. So it really saves a lot of time for building chatbots here, not having to know every single topic or thing that your users might ask based off of your data. So kind of this takes a minute just to get set up there, and we can look at that. But I'm trying to think of a good question to ask here. What would be a good one? Like I'll say how to get started or something like that if it pops up here. And yeah, any other questions too, like why this is loading, please feel free to put those in the chat because I am kind of looking at that. Okay, so I didn't define any topics yet, so I'm going to go to test bot, and we'll hope this works based off of what I have. So I'll do something like, what is Power Automate? And hope that this works with the live demo. There you go. So as you can see, I just literally created a new bot, pointed it to that URL, didn't do anything else, and now it was able to go use GPT and based off that reference, give me an answer here, which looks pretty accurate. And the thing I love about it, it gives me a link back to know where it got it from, so I can learn more. So it takes me right back here to where it got that answer from. So it really just makes it so much easier to create bots with PVA with that new feature there. And this is just some details about how that works a little bit. I mean, it's doing a lot of pre-filtering just so like for your own awareness, and you're kind of wondering, oh, what if it, kind of returns bad information, to kind of pre-filter out anything offensive, right, and all that kind of stuff, and do the check, and then call GPT, and then moderate the response, and all that's in the reply. All right. So now we'll skip past that. And then finally, AI Builder, just the last thing I wanted to really touch on here. We do have a new Azure OpenAI model with AI Builder. This is another preview thing that you have to sign up for, unfortunately at the moment, but it should be rolled out relatively soon, I hope, more widely. But it opens up a lot of different scenarios. So we can have it do things like anything that we can do with GPT, generate text, reply to conversations, write new content, whatever we need to do. We can do that with this new model. And there's some templates in there. So we just pass it in some instructions on what we want it to do. It can summarize information, and we can automate that with AI Builder. All right, so I want to be respectful of time here as well. So just some resources to kind of get started and learning more. The community, if you haven't already, make sure to join the community, because it's just, like I mentioned, a really great community here to join and get involved in. And the forums, they're a great way to see what other people are doing and get some questions answered if you get stuck. Some great documentation out there as well on Learn that I provided. We have user groups as well like this. So, you're already involved in one, so you did that step there. And then I do host a show, as I mentioned, called the Low Code Revolution. So if you're just wanting to get some ideas about, what are other people doing with the Power Platform and kind of what can you do with this and use cases and all that kind of stuff, that's a good resource to check out as well there to learn more from what others are doing, people in the community with it. All right, so we have 2 minutes for some questions if there are any more. I know I covered a lot there.
That was fantastic. Thank you so much, April.
Thank you.
If any of you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat or come off mute.
I'll share that as well. Just more ways to reach me there too. If we don't get to whatever questions today, happy to answer them offline too.
Hi, April. This is Naprajun. I'm trying to understand, is there any way, if you're releasing multiple, much more templates for Power Apps or um, for other use cases which you already have as an inventory, but is there any future releases on templates for using these copilots together with Power Apps or together with Power Automate, certain use cases for adapting this product to us?
So by templates for this, do you mean like, sorry, can you elaborate on that just like a little bit more so I
Yeah,
make sure I understand the
uh,
question?
sure, sure. If I open up the Power Apps when we are creating as in early stages, when we try to create, there are multiple templates for it may be expense, travel expenses, or it may be finance. There are multiple applications provided by Microsoft itself to download those applications and plug and play kind of things.
Yeah.
So in the same way, do we expect much more application release um, to tell the users uh, how we can use the Copilot in these areas and adapt with the new capabilities?
Got it. Yeah, I don't know like if there's going to be anything like that that kind of gives you idea. I think if anything, you'll see like maybe some guidance on like the prompts, because like there's this whole world with like all this Copilot stuff of prompt engineering and like how do you ask it, like the most of what you're looking for. So I don't know if we'll see like anything really in the templates of like stuff that was generated from Copilots or like kind of quick started type things. But that's good feedback too, to kind of get back with like how can we kind of show more examples like right on that homepage of here are things that you can do with that. Yeah, but I don't know of anything, but I'll definitely give that feedback.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.